President Obama met with John Boehner at the White House earlier this evening on a day when, once again, polls show just how unpopular John Boehner's position is. A new Pew Research poll finds that 69% support raising taxes on incomes over $250,000, while just 28% oppose it. A majority of Republican voters, 52%, support raising taxes on incomes over $250,000, and more than two-thirds of independent voters, 68%, support it. But being the leader of the poll-denying party isn't always easy.
Could you describe how difficult it is to craft a deal and that your conference will support while not jeopardizing your job as Speaker?
I'm not concerned about my job as Speaker. What I'm concerned about is doing the right thing for our kids and our grandkids.
John Boehner is now getting all sorts of helpful strategic advice from Democrats.
And we still believe that a big deal is possible. We believe the parameters are there. In case of emergency, the House should break the glass. The House Speaker ought to allow the Republicans to vote on extending tax cuts for 98% of the American people. That would deal with a chunk of the so-called fiscal cliff.
And former Democratic Speaker Nancy Pelosi is now giving public seminars on how a bill becomes a law even when the Speaker of the House doesn't really like the bill.
They can bring a bill to the floor that does not have the majority, or maybe does have the majority but doesn't have everybody in their caucus on board. They can bring a bill to the floor that the Republicans don't have to vote for, except for 25 of them. So it's tough. But you have to do it. So is the point that you don't want to put your members on the spot? Figure it out. We did. Figure it out. And then go forward and continue to debate the issue.
Senator Rand Paul, who has announced he's going to vote against any version of a tax increase, has this suggestion for how to get the tax increase passed in the House that he, of course, would vote against in the Senate.
My suggestion to them has been, and I've talked to several members, and you can ask them too, is that I think we should put forward what we're for. If it gets beyond that and something's going to happen, I think we should encourage those in the House to vote present, let the Democrats own this tax increase, and it can become a Democrat plan.
Joining me now is Republican Congressman Phil Rowe of Tennessee, the chairman of the House Subcommittee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. Thanks for joining me tonight, Congressman.
Thanks, Lawrence. Thanks for having me on.
So you got a real tough situation here. What do you make of Nancy Pelosi's advice to John Boehner, which is, listen, every once in a while something comes along that you don't like, that you don't really want to move, but you put it out there on the floor, you let it get the support of the minority party if that's the way it's going to pass, and you let anyone in your own party go for it and let the bill pass?
Well, Lawrence, that's certainly one way to do it. I think what I would like to do is suggest that if the taxes do go up in the top 2%, and you know this because probably not anybody better on television, you've served as as chief of staff of the Finance Committee in the Senate, so I know you know numbers well. This is not going to solve our problem. I looked at the numbers and looked at the $30 billion number for 10 years and the $50 billion number for raising taxes on the top 2% does this. The problem with it is it only covers 10 days of the deficit in November of this year. So it's spending, and the other way you raise revenue, which nobody's talking about, is get our people back to work. I looked at the data, Lawrence, about a week ago, and with this recovery, and we just saw that our unemployment rate dropped to 7.7% because 500,000 people quit looking for a job. And we've created, I think, this year about 150,000 jobs per month. If we create 350,000 jobs per month for the next 3 years, it's going to take that to get our unemployment rate down to 6%. That's what we ought to be concentrating on, is cutting spending and getting our people back to work. This small and because you raise taxes, the CBO statically scores this for our viewers out there, means that they put a number on it. I mean, small businesses will certainly make some changes, and I doubt we'll get the revenue that's predicted. Other tax increases haven't done that, but that is one way to raise revenue.
Congressman Rowe, let's go up to New Year's Eve. Let's go off the cliff, as it were, and now it's January 1st, January 2nd, and John Boehner convenes an emergency session of the House, and the proposal before the House of Representatives is to cut taxes on everything except the two top income tax brackets. What would happen on a vote in the House in January, in the first week of January, to cut taxes on every bracket except the top two?
I think I would bring that bill, and I think I would bring a second bill to cut taxes on the top two, or not cut them, but not to let people know we're extending the tax cuts of 2001 and 2003.
But just to get to the mechanics of where we would be in the first week of January is the rates would all go up, they'd all go back up to those Clinton levels, and so what the president and what the Democrats would want to do is say, all right, let's cut them all except those top two, and Republicans would want to cut them all. Why not send, say, two bills out on the floor, one that cuts them all, including the top, that would not pass with Democratic votes, but could pass with with Republican votes, and then put the other one out there that will cut them all except the top two. That would surely pick up enough Republican votes to pass also, wouldn't it?
I think you're right. I talked to Senator Corker about that. That's certainly one strategy. Again, we're still talking about tax increases, and what we need to be talking about is what we're going to do for the entire budget. This is and you know this, Lawrence, you've looked at numbers, I've heard you on your show talk about it. It doesn't put a dent in the deficit, and we've got to stop these trillion-dollar deficits for the foreseeable future.
That would be an argument against any tariff. It would be an argument against the gasoline tax. It would be an argument against anything, that it doesn't solve all of our problems. When's the last time you voted for something in Congress that completely solved everything about the problem?
Never. Can you say never?
Congressman Phil Rowe, thank you very, very much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me on, Lawrence.
Coming up, the comedy